Phoenix. The first rule of the Detroit Lions draft strategy is you do not talk about the Detroit Lions draft strategy. The second rule of the Detroit Lions draft strategy is, well, you probably see where this is going. And last year, it worked. The Lions had their eye on Frank Ragnow all along, a tough, powerful and fundamentally sound interior offensive lineman with 3 years of starting experience in the nation's best conference. But nobody knew about their interest. I thought the Lions were going to draft the best front seven player that was available to them last year. In my final mock draft, that player was Alabama's Darren Payne. My colleague over at the Detroit Free Press, Dave Burkett, had them taking Alabama linebacker Rashaan Evans. So did the Athletic's Chris Burke. The Detroit News' Justin Rogers went with Boston College edge Harold Landry, while MLive's Nate Atkins had them taking Florida defensive lineman Taven Bryan. Yes, the entire beat whiffed on the pick. Nobody even got the position right. Heck, nobody even got the right side of the ball. And none of us had Ragnow going in the first round at all. There's no telling what other teams thought Detroit was going to do, but clearly the team did a great job covering its tracks throughout the draft process. Because there doesn't appear to be a major mock draft anywhere in the country that had the Lions taking the guy they wanted all along. As those names come off the board, other teams are always going to be curious, like, who's taking this guy? Lions coach Matt Patricia said this week at the NFL owners' meetings in Phoenix. It happened last year with Frank. It's a great example. There was teams all around us that were looking for guys in those situations, and just kind of being silent helps. A lot of teams probably thought we were going in one direction, and you wind up going in a different direction, and you wind up getting someone that you think you can build off of. So you've just got to be careful a little bit with what you're saying. That's why Patricia and the Lions are so tight-lipped this time of year, even with something as casual as talking about their needs. Of course their roster doesn't lie either, so we have a rough idea of what they're looking to do. They could really use another tight end, for example. They could use another cornerback, running back and pass rusher too. And they need to add a quarterback at some point, although that almost certainly won't happen in the first round. They could use another offensive lineman, and it could happen early. Just look at how much they prioritized Ragnow last year, and Taylor Decker in 2016. Now consider their needed right guard, where TJ Lang is out, and guys like Oday Aboushi, Kenny Wiggins, Joe Dahl and perhaps Tyrell Crosby lead the way. But Patricia declined to say much about it this week, and that's no surprise either. It's that time of the year, where everything Detroit says and does, or doesn't say, or doesn't do, is meant to try to throw everyone off their scent. What Patricia did do, though, was provide an interesting look into what he prizes in a college prospect. Is a good question, because the college game is hard to transfer sometimes into the pro game, he said. There's certain things you just don't see dynamically. But you look for the simple things, you know. It may sound cliché, but it's really not, because we're going to teach them the other stuff. We're gonna teach them scheme, we're gonna teach them fundamentals, we're gonna teach them some of those things. So you start basically with, alright, what does his speed look like on film? What does his pad level look like? Can he come downhill or can he get open? Is the fundamental skill set that he needs, quickness in and out of breaks, whether it's football instincts and how smart he is as a player, does he make checks and adjustments? Is he a guy that sees the whole field? You know, vision is a big thing with a football player, obviously, because when you're out on the field and 22 guys are trying to orchestrate themselves in the same direction, there's feel, there's vision, there's people working off of each other, and you can at least get that sense of, alright, this guy, he may not know what he's looking at but he feels this over here, and then that's what's great about getting in a room with them and sitting down and going over the tape, like, what was the call here? What were you supposed to do? Did you see this over here or did you feel this? Were you looking in this direction? And if they can talk football and really understand from a conceptual standpoint, that's where you know you can really build. Patricia also said, and this will surprise exactly no one who's been paying attention since he arrived in Detroit, and Bob Quinn before that, he's looking for toughness, that's fundamental, he said. And you want to find that never quit attitude. The guys that are always going to go compete. But first and foremost, you want to feel the love, you want to feel the passion. So just to recap, he's looking for speed, and pad level, and fundamentals, and instincts, and IQ, and especially toughness. Last year, it was Frank Ragnow that checked those boxes. And Detroit wanted him, badly, even though nobody knew it. Which is just the way Detroit likes it. And it's instructive to keep that in mind this year, as names like Montez Sweat, Clelin Ferrell, Ed Oliver, Rashawn Gary and Devin White become trendy picks for Detroit. Of course one of those guys could be the pick because there are only so many guys worthy of a top 8 pick. But everyone thought they were going defense last year too. Literally, every major local reporter had them going defense, when they actually had eyes for an interior offensive lineman all along. Lions Matt Patricia continues culture change away from Jim Caldwell era. A culture change is underway in Allen Park. I would say it's an interesting chess match at times. Patricia said, everybody does smoke screens, right? Try to figure out what they do. Teams have different philosophies, which is interesting, too. If you study the draft, you can really look at teams that take their pick and just sit where they are. There's teams that move, there's teams that try to move. You may be trying to move, you may not be able to move. It always takes another partner to work in that category, so you might be a team that's always actively every pick going, hey, what can we do here, and it just may not happen. And you may not see it on the forefront, but there's teams that just constantly work the board, and then there's teams that, hey, this is where we pick and we're going to go with. The philosophy of staying where we pick and we're going to draft a guy that's available, whether it's best available or based on need, that's a whole other philosophy that goes into it. So very interesting to track teams, and then when teams switch, does the philosophies change? Is it head coach driven? Is it GM driven? Is it ownership driven? And kind of how all that works. Those strategies you've got to understand, so then you know when you're having conversations with different people, what conversation you could have. While the Lions do their best to keep their thinking out of the media, they spend a lot of time consuming what's in the media to get a sense of what other teams might do. Quinn has said he even enjoys reading mock drafts. And the team does their own as well, one after another, to get a feel for how the board could break. I call them case studies. You try to do as many as case studies as possible, based on information that we have and what we think teams need. So if you guys want to walk around and start asking other teams what are their needs are, what are they going to go in the draft, and get that back to me, I'd appreciate that very much. Patricia joked. You guys would be able to cover a lot of area for me right there, but we'll always kind of try to assess what we're hearing in the media, what we know from the scouts, what we know from the roster, different needs that they have, so that when we do those mock drafts or case studies, we have a better picture of what it's going to look like. And to be real honest with you, and Bob can speak to this more, but that's exactly what happened with Frank. We just kept going over and over and over the scenarios, and we just kept looking at the board, and every scenario we came up with, I'm like, he's still there. So are we good to go? And it happened exactly like that.